Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining another episode of the Leverage Report. Really excited to be joined today and going to be talking all things hair relaxer with Danielle Ward Mason. Danielle, before we dive in, I've got a lot of questions about hair relaxer. Would love for you to give our listeners a little bit of sneak peek about your background. Um, I'll stop there because there's a lot. So tell us about your background.
Well, first, Susan, thank you so much for having me. My name is Danielle Ward Mason. I am based in Montgomery, Alabama, born and raised here, have been practicing law for 15 years, and the majority of that time has been spent handling mass tort cases. And I think the one that probably predominated most of my life was the talcum powder litigation against Johnson and Johnson for the ovarian cancer it was causing in women. I now am the CEO and co-founder of my own firm, Bullock Ward Mason, where we are continuing the fight in big mass tort cases, including hair relaxers. My partner, Tina Bullock, runs our single event practice and handles primarily med mal. And we're just excited to be involved in the hair relaxer litigation. It is very important to me personally. And I'm just really looking forward to where things go with it.
Mhm.
It's very exciting and very important.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing a little bit about your background. One question I always ask, because it's interesting to hear when people share their response to the question about why the legal field, what was the purpose behind becoming an attorney? Were there any mentors or kind of the deeper why behind where you are today?
Wow. So I think being a lawyer has sort of always been in my DNA. I had some twists and turns in my life, so it wasn't a very linear path, but it was one that, when you ask a kid, what do they want to be when they grow up? For me, it was always a lawyer. And, my parents will probably say it was because I like to talk, um, but ultimately, I've always just found an affinity with the law. I think the system, while it's imperfect,
Mhm.
is one that we as citizens of this country need to necessarily be able to rely on and have faith in. And there's so many good lawyers, and sometimes we get overshadowed by the ones that don't always handle things with the utmost integrity. But it's important to me to be in this profession to try to maintain the high ideals of what it's about, which is, for the type of practice I have been in for the majority of my life, it's been protection of people over the establishment. Outside of law school, I was an assistant federal defender for the Middle District. And, that fight was very important to me because, you know, the life and liberty that we enjoy should only be taken away when it is significantly proven, and
Mhm.
those rights that we have still exist unless and until those everything has been done by the book, and those convictions are determined by a jury who has heard all of the facts. And I think those rights and protections are important, and I think the same is true today as citizens in the civil side of practice, where we are sort of at the mercy of big corporations who produce things and products that in their analysis of things, it's something that they know they'll make a lot of money on. But on the flip side of that, how many people get hurt because they've cut corners, or because they've chosen to go a cheap route, or
Sure.
because
Yeah.
they have just determined that the profits that they make are more important than ensuring the safety of the products that they're putting out that we're using. And sometimes it's products that we're using every day.
Mhm.
So it's very, very important. And I think more than ever, lawyers have become the watchdog of safety in our communities. And I'm very proud of that. I'm
Mhm.
very proud that we are holding people accountable for what they do. And hopefully, each step that we take and each case that we bring, it gets us one step closer to that safety and that confidence that we can have in living our lives to the fullest.
Mhm. Well, Danielle, as you know, I'm grateful that you're spending time today with us and with me talking all things hair relaxer. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about and ask you kind of For listeners that may not have a deep understanding about this litigation, would you provide just an overview of the litigation and then provide some relevant updates that we should be aware of?
Sure. So the hair relaxer litigation is something that the practice of using hair relaxers is something that I am very familiar with. I personally use the products from the time that I was a child all the way up to my mid 30s. And these products contain chemicals within them that are known to disrupt the endocrine system. And our endocrine system is highly important for the regulation of hormones and processes in the body that help us naturally protect ourselves, or defend us from outside agents and all of these things. And so if you can imagine something that we get exposed to on a pretty regular basis, having chemicals like that, particularly introduced to the body when you're a child, and still your body is still figuring out what its normal development mechanism is going to be. What we have learned is that the chemicals that are in these products have led to the kind of disruption that results in outcomes that are endocrine dependent, estrogen dependent, hormonally driven chronic conditions, and it affects the reproductive system. There was this all got started and became sort of to all of our collective knowledge around this time last year. I think the date it specifically was October 18th. I woke up one morning to all of the news shows, all of the morning shows, digital reports, all kinds of things relative to a study that linked the use of hair relaxers to uterine cancer. And, with more digging into that and getting a little bit more behind what that study entailed, you would come to find that there has been a lot of connection between the types of chemicals we know to be in hair relaxers and a wealth of different reproductive harms, including fibroids, including endometriosis, infertility problems. All of these types of things are and can be connected to the regular and consistent use of hair relaxers. And what that has done, particularly in a large population of women, and particularly Black women, who use this product to straighten their hair. And there is you can't really tell this story without talking about the whys of using the product. And a lot of us used hair relaxers because there was a societal pressure to do so. Um, every magazine, every commercial, there's this definition of beauty that is tied to straight hair, the kind that can whip and blow in the wind and look shiny and sleek. And it's a pressure, particularly for Black women whose hair doesn't naturally grow that way.
Sure.
But this product, was put out there to allow us to be able to feel that and to be a part of that culture. And it's not just a societal thing, it's professional. It's there's a reason why there's a Crown Act that helps to prevent discrimination against Black women for the way they use the way they wear their hair. And hair relaxers were just something that allowed us to feel like we could fit in and allowed us to feel like we could conform. And what was not known is that use of the product could lead to what it's leading to, which is a very high level of reproductive harms in women that ultimately are resulting in sterility. Black women tend to get fibroids and these hormonally chronic driven reproductive conditions more than any other race. But the correlation to that is also that we, in some cases, upwards of 90% of the entire Black female population has exposed themselves to these products. And that's something that none of us contemplated. No, we didn't know that the use of this product could lead to us ultimately having conditions that are so debilitating that it affects your daily life, your relationships, your marriages, your just ability to get up and go in the morning, the pain, the bleeding, the just incessant trying to have children. So many of us are finding ourselves in these problems that are very physically debilitating, but also very mentally and emotionally challenging. And so, that's not anything we contemplated. And these suits are here to make sure that these products, if they must remain on the shelves, that they contain a proper warning so that women can have informed choices about what they're engaging in. And if that can't happen and these products can't be reformulated to be safer, then they should not be sold.
Hmm. You talk about products. Who are the main manufacturers of these products?
Well, the biggest one would be L'Oreal. We all have heard of them. Revlon is another huge defendant, although I speak of them a little bit differently because prior to this litigation beginning, Revlon had already engaged in a bankruptcy process. Those are probably the biggest. The next one that I think in terms of the products that they make and how popular they are and how many women have likely used them would be Strength of Nature. That's not a name that we hear every day in our households, but we certainly know the products. We certainly
Mhm.
know the brands, and that would include the very popular children's brand, Just for Me. It includes Motions, TCB, a few others. We have Namaste, which is a defendant that creates a very popular product called ORS olive oil. A lot of women use that, myself included. There's really a very large number of defendants in these cases, but I would say that those are likely going to be named in about 90% of every complaint.
Do you happen to have any, or other attorneys talked about just the potential scale, how many people we think have been impacted by using these products?
Well, just doing a little bit of math, there's approximately 21 million Black women in the country. And if you assess the fact that about 90% of those women have exposed themselves to hair relaxers, we're talking about millions of women. Now, are all of them dealing with reproductive harms that are simply symptomatic? No.
Mhm.
But there is a very high correlation. And I do think that we do have we're talking about the predominance of Black women in this country who've exposed themselves and likely have some reproductive issue or infertility issue or have been diagnosed specifically with these conditions that are symptomatic enough to require some type of intervention, whether it be surgeries to remove the fibroids. Those are called myomectomies if you're just removing fibroids. Some women's fibroids are so embedded that they cannot be removed without removing the entire uterus, and therefore, we're seeing hysterectomies, and a good number of those hysterectomies are being performed on women who are still in their childbearing ages. For the cancers, uh, including perhaps even breast cancers. There are some studies that suggest breast cancers are related. These women are going through very extreme treatments with their chemotherapy, and those treatments are very aggressive. So, I mean, we're talking about a great number of women here. All of them are not going to want to file suit. All of them, again, are not symptomatic to the point where they've had these types of damages. But I do anticipate that before this litigation is said and done, there likely will be tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of women who may have a claim that would be filed.
Yeah, it's a really large population. Um, what new studies or updates about the litigation can you share with us?
Well, just recently, another uterine cancer study was released, showing a statistically significant increased risk of women using hair relaxers connected with uterine cancer. So that is just sort of bolstering the previous study that came out about this time last year as well. There has also been a proposed rule by the FDA to ban these chemical hair relaxers. And right now, their rule is centered mostly on banning the chemical formaldehyde from chemical relaxers or these hair relaxers, which is a great start. As I understand it, the FDA will be calling for a public comment period. And I think it's important that we all, if we're involved in this litigation, lawyers, clients, scientists, researchers, anyone that has interest in this and a dog in the fight, we should weigh in on that, because it's not just the carcinogens that are problematic here. It is a host of the endocrine disrupting chemicals that I was referencing before that are, directly tied to reproductive issues in women. And I think, and I hope that the FDA, as they are looking at this, decides to look at it very comprehensively as a product that is a conduit of some very toxic things that are entering our system as we use these products, and use them in a way that, the product itself has a tendency to burn the scalp. And, a lot of women sometimes, as they're using this product, there are some women whose scalp burns every single time, whether and this is, you're doing everything right. But it's a process that is pretty harsh to the hair to help break down all of the bonds that are necessary for you to ultimately have straight hair. And that is it naturally heats, that interacts with the scalp. And so many times after the product is used, you've got open wounds in the scalp.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've got all this toxicity in the product that, just not only is being absorbed through the scalp, which is probably the most absorbent part of our bodies, you're also sort of facilitating it even further, because that scalp is opening up
Sure.
when the product is being used. And so, it's getting directly into your bloodstream, your lymphatic system. And nobody uses a hair relaxer just once. These are products that are designed to be used anywhere from every 4 to 8 weeks. And many of us have used these products from the time we were children. Some still use it today and haven't stopped. But we're talking about decades of exposure. And so when the studies come out and talk about heavy use or frequent use, they're literally defining that as being more than 4 applications a year. And most of us are well above that because of the amount of time. Like, once you start using this, it's very difficult to stop. It's called creamy crack in the streets for a reason, because there's sort of this addictive component to it, that you're used to your hair being a certain way. And when it starts to grow back out, especially at the root, and you've got hair that is more kinky at the root, but then, the rest of it is straight, now you don't have uniformity in your head. And so, in order to get that, to cut the ties completely, it requires a lot of big decisions about women and how they feel about themselves relative to their hair.
Sure.
Some are relegated to do what's called the big chop and just chop it all off and start over. That's a very hard thing for women to do. Our hair really is a crown, and to have to cut it all out just to sort of try to find what your normal hair patterns are again, can be a very difficult step, both psychologically and how you feel about your own self, but also in terms of, like, how do I care for hair like this? I mean, it's a process, and it's not a difficult decision for any woman to make. But certainly it would be an easier decision to make about our hair if we didn't feel the need to be so forced into the product in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, it all goes back to what you were saying initially about how we're ingrained about, from a society perspective, what we're shown is what beauty is.
Right.
Different torts, as you know, have different and unique challenges depending on the demographics. Anything with this litigation and with the cases that you currently have, any unique challenges?
really, I think one of the bigger ones is just the sheer volume of parties involved.
Mhm.
A number of manufacturers. Within those manufacturers, you've got different brands of hair relaxers, and then under each brand, like Dark and Lovely or Motions or Just for Me, are even more different variants of particular products that are formulated differently, that have different strengths. These products can come in mild or regular formulas, super formulas. So they come with all different types of things infused in them. So just sort of narrowing down the client's product use, the periods of time when they might have used it. That's particularly challenging. In the talcum powder litigation, we had one defendant, one main defendant, and really one product that is more recognizable, I think, as a product than anything else. Everybody knows baby powder. It has looked virtually the same in terms of packaging for so many years. We don't have that same ease of, this is the one product that I used. It's going to be a number of products that women use over the course of their lifetime. And sometimes it's hard for me to remember what I ate yesterday, much less,
Yeah,
what was
sure.
the product that
Yeah.
I used in my head when I was 8 years old. But there's some parts of it, though, that I think are very sort of set in the mind. And, for me, I used to examine those boxes a lot. A lot of times when I'd be with my mom and we'd pick up the kit we were going to use, a lot of it, I was drawn to the model on the box, what the kids looked like, what their hair looked like. So looking at those, at the actual product themselves, those models are very distinctive, and remembering that, it like all comes flooding back. But outside of that, I think, just the number of people that are involved, the number of defendants that we've got to deal with, the number of different products, the client development on how to tell that story, and to be as credible and as comprehensive with the products that have been used, are all of those things, I think, will be a challenge, but they're not insurmountable. I think ultimately, because of the practice and because of just how pervasive the use of these products are, it's not as difficult as you might think once you really start talking to these women, and they're telling their stories and what they remember. And of course, there are other people that may know, hairstylists, and for example, for me, all I have to do is call my mother, because she knows exactly what she put in my head.
Sure.
So having witnesses and some of those things are also very helpful in this litigation. And I just think it's a lot of moving parts to corral. But at the end of the day, I think that this litigation is very strong litigation. I think it is extremely worthy for us to be pursuing, and regardless of the challenges, we'll meet them, because it is just that important for us to.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. For any of our attorneys that are listening that either one are new to mass tort, or two interested in this litigation, and I'm sure folks have come to you asking for your advice. What feedback or any suggestions, advice you would give to them if they're wanting to
You
get into this litigation?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of really good projects that are going on right now. And as someone who's in a new firm, or at least a newer firm, decisions about getting into mass torts can't be made lightly. But for this in particular, this litigation in particular, my advice would be, it's something to definitely consider if you're looking to be involved in a mass tort and you're not sure which one. I think this one is definitely worth the attention, and the time and the resources that would have to go into successfully litigating it. It is for me in particular, as a Black woman, who's been practicing law, it's rare to find the type of case that is um, so personal, and so like I've walked in our clients' shoes. I totally understand what their stories are, because I dealt with quite a few of these issues myself. And this is how we start trying to narrow some of the disparate gaps we have, in terms of a population that really has never really felt as though there's been much attention placed on their issues. And so this is the time for that. This is the type of litigation that allows us to not only focus on the matters at hand, but the outside factors too. The disparities in healthcare that Black women deal with, and the lack of preventative or diagnostic care that a lot of times we look for, and are can be overlooked or dismissed, or just sort of told, this is, you have a painful period. Okay, it's, so do a lot of women. Take this
Mhm.
instead and go lay down. And then, you kind of let things fester to a point that ultimately, by the time this woman comes back and, is dealing with blood transfusions and all of this, then the remedy is, okay, this has gotten so out of hand. Our only recommendation to you is to have a hysterectomy. And Black women experience hysterectomies more than any other race as well. I mean, it's just, there's just a disproportionate outcome for Black women in these conditions, both in how they're diagnosed and their treatment options, just all across the board. And so we want to highlight all of that. We want to highlight also the narrative that Black female beauty is its own beauty. It doesn't have to be defined by or conform to any other type of way to be. And I think as we examine all of the harshness and the harms that go along with what we've had to do to chase that beauty, it's time for us to now see that we can pivot from that and be more comfortable in ourselves and in the way that our hair naturally grows, and that we don't have to chemically straighten it. Even if you want to straighten it, there are other ways to do that than to just rely upon chemical induction
Right.
of this into our heads. So my, for any lawyer that's on the sidelines on this one right now, don't be. It is going to take all of our collective fight, against very big, very influential corporate actors who, I believe, have known about this for a very long time. And if they didn't know, there's no reason for them not to have. And that is part of the negligence part of this. It is their job to have known. It is their job to have tested. It is their job to substantiate the safety of not just the overall product that they've made, but the individual components that also make it up. And so this is one to not sit on the sideline for, because there's a real public health issue going on here that will help save generations of young Black girls if we can stop the practice now, and
Yeah.
also start changing the narrative about, what is beautiful and what's acceptable.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's key. Danielle, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate. Of course, I always get excited when I have an opportunity to connect with other women leaders in the industry. So I'm just grateful again that you took time to give us insight, updates on this litigation. And I know that just having talked with you and Tina, that your firm is partnering with other firms, and they are maybe an attorney wants to get involved, but they don't really know all the nuances. But you guys are there to be able to come alongside them and partner with them and help them make those decisions and work with them on those cases.
Absolutely. In addition to what's going on in the MDL, our firm is involved in the leadership for the state court cases in Cook County, Illinois. I've recently been appointed to that plaintiff executive committee. So there's litigation that is underway in state court there, also in Chatham County and DeKalb County, Georgia. There's an appeal that is currently pending in the Georgia Court of Appeals, and that's pursuant to a motion to dismiss that our firm was able to win on behalf of a very deserving client. The defendants then decided to appeal a couple of narrow issues, and that's being briefed right now. But we're looking at as the litigation develops and as discovery starts to come forward, we're looking at a number of potentially different venues in state courts that we can continue to bring these cases. And I've been doing them since the beginning. I've been involved in this from the beginning. So if anybody is looking for where to start or needs a little bit more about this than what we've been able to get to on this webinar, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm always very happy to share what I know. But I also know that I'm in this for the long haul. I will not give up on these ladies. I will not give up on these clients. I will not give up on, all representing all of the potential conditions that are at issue here. I think it's very, very important that we're comprehensive about this and that we protect women's reproductive health at all costs.
Yeah. Well, we certainly can hear your passion come through.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Danielle. I really appreciate it again. And we will have your information. So if folks want to reach out, they know how to get in touch with you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your having me.